announced a few days ago that they're going to move a lot of their manufacturing business to Mexico. I'm just notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States, so that if I win, John Deere is going to be paying a 200%.
John Deere just plowed right over Trump, and let's just say he did not take it well. In a bizarre, almost cartoonish meltdown, Trump lashed out after the iconic green giant wiped the floor with him in a way no one saw coming. Was it a political snub? A branding war? A rogue tractor rebellion? The details will leave you shaking your head and maybe even laughing out loud. One thing's for sure, this wasn't just a loss, it was an absolute harvest of humiliation. So what exactly happened? Buckle up, because this one's a wild ride.
John Deere reacting tonight, the company, after a reaction after former President Donald Trump said earlier this week he would impose a 200% tariff on the company if it moves production to Mexico. Now, earlier this year, Deere announced it would be moving part of its production line from the Dubuque John Deere Works to Mexico, also laying off 99 local workers. In a statement to the KWWL News Department here today, John Deere said the layoffs were due to what they called a weakening farm economy in
John Deere and Donald Trump, a feud nobody saw coming, yet here we are, watching an unstoppable tractor meet an immovable ego. The green and yellow agricultural giant has long been the backbone of America's farmlands, its machines plowing fields, harvesting crops, and generally keeping the heartland running. For farmers, John Deere isn't just a brand, it's practically a religion. Meanwhile, Trump has spent years branding himself as the savior of rural America, dishing out trade war battles, ethanol promises, and a whole lot of farmer hat photo ops. But now, well, the love affair seems to be hitting a pothole the size of a combine harvester.
Former President Trump has proposed a 200% tariff on John Deere tractors if they're made in Mexico. Are you concerned that some of these tariff proposals by the GOP nominee could drive up costs for consumers or hurt urban exporters in Kentucky, for example?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of tariffs. They raise the prices for American consumers. I'm more of a free trade kind of Republican that remembers how many jobs are created by the exports.
So, what sent these two powerhouses into an all-out mudslinging match? Was it an ill-timed tweet? A rogue John Deere tractor rolling up to a Trump rally? Not quite. The seeds of this feud were planted in the fertile fields of business and politics, where money and power tend to grow best. John Deere, despite its deep roots in American soil, has been making moves that don't exactly align with Trump's brand of economic nationalism. The company has embraced automation, sustainability, and global trade policies that, let's just say, don't sit well with someone whose idea of innovation is slapping tariffs on anything that moves: farmers. Many of whom voted for Trump have long relied on John Deere, but they also rely on fair trade, affordable equipment, and policies that don't send crop prices into a tailspin.
John Deere announced a mass layoff that will affect 75 employees at its Ottumwa facility. According to the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification site, the announcement was made Monday. The layoffs will go into effect on February 7th. This comes after John Deere Ottumwa Works temporarily shut down the plant in early December. They say the shutdown was a response to reduced customer demand for agricultural equipment. The plant has since reopened. The company will be offering affected employees transition assistance, which may include severance packages.
Then came the big moment, the spark that ignited the tractor-fueled firestorm. John Deere, in a decision that sent shockwaves through conservative circles, took a business stance that Trump simply could not ignore. Maybe it was their push for more worker rights and unions, which clashed with Trump's corporate-friendly rhetoric, or perhaps it was their strategic shift in global supply chains, hinting that they weren't going to play along with his America First mantra. Even worse, there's speculation that John Deere made a not-so-subtle move that Trump interpreted as a political jab, be it a corporate endorsement, a leadership shakeup, or even a clever ad campaign that seemed to troll him. Imagine a John Deere commercial about getting the job done airing right after one of his rally speeches.
John Deere announced it is laying off nearly 120 employees at a facility in Ankeny. The layoffs impact workers at John Deere Des Moines Works. A spokesperson says the layoffs are due to a weakened farm economy and a reduction in customer orders for its equipment. The layoffs will happen on March 28th, April 4th, and April 28th.
Whatever the trigger, Trump took it personally. And when Trump takes something personally, the world knows. Within minutes, his Truth Social account was lighting up like a Christmas tree at Mar-a-Lago, filled with rants about woke tractors, overrated farming equipment, and something about how he probably invented the wheel before John Deere even thought of it. His supporters, many of whom proudly parked John Deere tractors in their barns, were left wondering, do they stand with their favorite brand or with their favorite political showman?
More John Deere employees here in central Iowa will soon be without a job. KCCI's Kayla James reports 119 employees from the Ankeny plant will be laid off over the next few months.
John Deere tells us the layoffs at John Deere Des Moines Works in Ankeny will occur across 3 dates, the final group happening on April 28th. An agricultural economist with the Iowa State University says, unfortunately, these layoffs are not surprising.
There's a lot of uncertainty right now around the farm economy.
And just like that, the battle lines were drawn. John Deere, a company that has spent nearly 200 years avoiding political theater, suddenly found itself at the center of a Trump-fueled spectacle. But unlike most of his targets, Deere wasn't budging. This wasn't just another feud, it was shaping up to be a full-blown harvest of humiliation. And then, like a perfectly tuned combine roaring to life at dawn, John Deere made its move. And it was a beauty. Not a press conference, not a dramatic statement, just cold hard business, the kind that cuts deep. Deere, the very symbol of American farming grit, decided it was done playing along with Trump's economic tantrums. Maybe it was the decision to expand production outside the US, subtly sidestepping Trump's loud and proud America First fantasy. Maybe it was their embrace of automation, a direct contradiction to Trump's obsession with bringing back real American jobs, which, ironically, nobody in America actually wanted. Or maybe, just maybe, it was John Deere's quiet but undeniable nod to workers' rights, as it continued negotiating fairer deals for laborers, while Trump was busy cheering on union busting like a billionaire whose only experience with hard labor was firing people on TV.
Hey, ready? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Love it. You think Biden can do that? I don't know.
Whatever the exact trigger, the effect was instant. It wasn't just a business decision, it was an earthquake, sending tremors through Trump's beloved rural voter base. The man had spent years pounding his chest in front of factory workers and farmers, promising to bring back American greatness, while mostly handing out tax cuts to billionaires and taking credit for jobs that never materialized. And here was John Deere, the real titan of middle America, basically saying, yeah, no thanks. Cue the meltdown. Trump, a man who built an empire out of sticking his name on buildings he didn't build, now found himself up against a company that had been building actual things since 1837. And worse, the people he thought would rally behind him, the tractor-owning, corn-harvesting, MAGA hat-wearing faithful, were suddenly stuck in an awkward spot. Because let's be real, John Deere wasn't just some company to these folks. It was a legacy, a lifeline, a way of life. And now Trump was trying to tell them their beloved green and yellow workhorse had gone woke? Farmers weren't buying it.
We need Greenland, very importantly, for international security. We have to have Greenland. It's not a question of, do you think we can do without it? We can. If you look at Greenland right now, if you look at the waterways, you have Chinese and Russian ships all over the place. And we're not going to be able to do that. We're not relying on Denmark or anybody else to take care of that situation. And we're not talking about peace for the United States. We're talking about world peace. We're talking about international security. And right now, you look at it, you have warships all over the place going through right along.
Sure, they might have laughed when Trump ranted about windmills causing cancer, but this was personal. This was their tractors, their fields, their livelihoods. And no matter how many times Trump screamed about loyalty, they weren't about to park their John Deeres in protest just because some New York real estate guy got his feelings hurt. But the real kicker? John Deere didn't even flinch. No angry press releases, no scrambling to clarify their stance, just pure, unbothered, industrial-strength confidence, the kind that comes from knowing you actually matter. The company just kept rolling, watching from the rearview mirror as Trump flailed, realizing that for once in his life, he'd picked a fight with something bigger than his ego, a corporation that wasn't afraid of him. A brand that didn't need his approval, and a machine that quite literally could run him over. And then, like clockwork, the meltdown began. Within hours, Truth Social lit up with a flurry of furious, typo-ridden rants that felt less like a businessman responding to a corporate move and more like a man who just found out his favorite fast food joint discontinued his go-to order. John Deere is turning against the great American farmer, he fumed, apparently forgetting how to spell the name of the company that has been literally building farm equipment for nearly 2 centuries. They used to be very strong, very pro-Trump, and now, total disaster. People are saying they've gone woke. Very sad.
We begin tonight with breaking news on Deere & Company, who is being sued by the Federal Trade Commission. The FTC, along with the Illinois and Minnesota Attorneys General, is accusing John Deere of holding a monopoly on its repairs for combines and tractors. So the suit says Deere is limiting farmers and independent mechanics' ability to repair equipment themselves. Deere customers are forced to rely on a network of authorized dealers for necessary parts and repairs. And the FTC says this boosts profit for Deere while burdening farmers with higher costs and delays. The lawsuit seeks to stop Deere's conduct by ordering it to make its repair tools available to owners and independent repair shops.
Trump warns John Deere, if you build your factories in Mexico, we'll put a 200% tariff on all your goods sold back in this country. Go get them, Trump.
I know a lot about John Deere. I love the company, but as you know, they've announced a few days ago that they're going to move a lot of their manufacturing business to Mexico. I'm just...
And then came the classic Trumpian revisionist history. Frankly, I've done more for farmers than anyone, maybe even John Deere himself, who, by the way, I hear was not that great, okay? Some say he didn't even invent the tractor. Look it up. Never mind that John Deere actually invented the steel plow, not the tractor, but details were never really his thing. The campaign trail only made things worse. At rallies, he'd point at random green tractors in the crowd, shaking his head like he'd just caught them cheating on him. Look at that, folks. Look at that traitor tractor. Disgusting. And you know what? We don't need them. I hear Kubota, great brand, very strong, much better, okay? Farmers, many of whom had owned John Deere equipment since their grandfather's time, awkwardly shuffled in their seats, unsure of whether to cheer or hide their tractor keys. The media, of course, had a field day. Late-night comedians had way too much material to work with. Jimmy Kimmel couldn't stop laughing at Trump's claim that he probably could have been a great farmer if he hadn't been too busy being a genius businessman. Stephen Colbert ran a segment titled "Make Tractors Great Again," joking that Trump would soon start demanding loyalty oaths from farm equipment.
President Trump says the United States needs Greenland for international security. The president insisting that the U.S. must control the semi-autonomous Danish territory. He made those remarks from the White House while Vice President J.D. Vance visited a U.S. military base in Greenland and said that Denmark has underinvested in the island's security. Vance's trip was cut short and his visit was limited to the military base after Greenland and Denmark protested the visit. Holly Williams is in the capital, Nuuk, where the president's territorial ambitions.
And Saturday Night Live? Oh, they thrived. With an entire cold open featuring a fake Trump rally where he tried to sit on a John Deere tractor, only to fall off dramatically and blame rigged tires. Meanwhile, political rivals took the opportunity to twist the knife. Donald Trump is at war with tractors now, one senator quipped on Twitter. Next up, a fistfight with a scarecrow. Even some Republicans quietly distanced themselves, not wanting to be dragged into what was objectively the dumbest political feud of the year. But Trump? He just kept going. At one point, he claimed John Deere's tractors were overrated anyway because they didn't have gold trim and very beautiful, very classy interiors like my buildings. Then came the inevitable merchandise rollout, red hats that read, "Keep Tractors Conservative," and limited edition, Trump-approved toy bulldozers, as if that would somehow undo the damage. Yet, through it all, John Deere said nothing. No statements, no Twitter replies, no press conferences, just the quiet, unbothered hum of tractors continuing to do their job. And for Trump, that silence was louder than any insult. Farmers weren't exactly lining up to burn their John Deere caps. Sure, some of Trump's most die-hard supporters grumbled, reposting his all-caps rants and vowing to never buy green again, but when it came down to it, they had fields to plow, crops to harvest, and reality to face, none of which involved throwing a tantrum over a tractor brand.
New on the current, Deere & Company reported a net income of $869 million for the first quarter today. That's about half of the earnings report in the first quarter last year. Deere says worldwide sales are down 30%, but despite the drop, the company's full-year forecast of $5 to $5.5 billion remains steady. That outlook was made before any of the Trump administration's new tariffs on Mexico, where Deere has some facilities. Despite better than expected earnings, Deere stock fell about 2% today.
Because here's the thing, John Deere wasn't just some corporate name slapped on overpriced golf resorts. It was essential. Farmers relied on those machines to keep their livelihoods running, and no amount of Trump's furious name-calling was going to make them trade in their precision farming equipment for an off-brand alternative just to soothe his ego. And when the dust settled, the numbers told the real story. Polling showed a split. While Trump still held sway over much of the rural vote, a growing number of farmers weren't buying his outrage. Some even admitted, albeit quietly, that John Deere's recent moves, whether it was expanding manufacturing, improving supply chains, or even cautiously backing workers' rights, actually helped them. The economic data didn't lie. Deere's investments were stabilizing the industry, while Trump's tariff wars and trade battles had done little more than put farmers in financial chokeholds.
Unquote, we have had a presence in Mexico since 1952. They went on to say it's not unusual for Deere to consider any number of factors when it comes to leveraging our global footprint as a global business, they say, while building new products in U.S. factories. So that reaction from the company.
Interviews with farmers revealed the practical side of the situation. Of course, Trump tried to spin the narrative. He encouraged his base to boycott John Deere, a move so wildly out of touch that it became an instant meme. Farmers laughingly pointed out that John Deere's resale value alone made ditching their equipment financially impossible. One particularly sarcastic farmer went viral after posting, "Guess I'll just park my $250,000 combine out back to rust because a New York billionaire told me to."
You know, exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head there. John Deere is an iconic brand. It became famous for making quality equipment and farm and different things. And, a big part of that is, and the reason why farmers and others buy this, expensive equipment is because it's made by American union workers. Mm-hmm. When you take that out of the equation, what do you got left? And I don't think anyone is interested in seeing good American jobs being shipped to Mexico, especially these loyal farm families that are buying John Deere equipment for generation after generation, and even live in some of these small communities where that will be devastated by the loss of jobs.
And this was the real problem for Trump. The cracks were starting to show. Rural America had been one of his strongest strongholds, but now the loyalty was wobbling. Not in a dramatic rebellion-style way, but in the quiet, dangerous way that spells doom for politicians. The kind where people simply stop listening. If Trump was losing the farmers, even just a fraction of them, what did that mean for his future? For once, it wasn't the media, the Democrats, or the establishment coming for him. It was reality. Cold, hard economic reality. Running smoothly on John Deere wheels. Trump, predictably, did not move on. He never moves on. If there's one thing more powerful than a John Deere engine, it's Trump's ability to hold a grudge. Days after his initial meltdown, he was still fuming, still ranting, still trying to convince farmers that the very machines keeping their livelihoods afloat were somehow part of a grand conspiracy against him. He rolled out a new nickname, something along the lines of Woke Deere, and floated the idea that maybe, just maybe, he'd start his own tractor company. Because of course, if Trump loses a fight, the only logical solution is to pretend he was never interested in the first place and promise to build a shinier Trump-branded version.
Well, the layoffs aren't over yet at John Deere. The ag equipment giant announcing its additional job cuts at its Ankeny, Iowa plant. In total, 119 workers will be impacted, with the layoffs happening from March through April. It's reported the plant currently employs about 1,500 workers. Deere saying in a statement to Iowa media that these layoffs continue to be a result of a struggling farm economy. The Ankeny plant manufactures grain and tillage tools and sprayers, along with cotton pickers and cotton strippers.
John Deere, on the other hand, did what it does best, kept rolling. No frantic press conferences, no backtracking, no desperate attempts to clarify its position. It simply existed unbothered, like a farmer watching a storm rage in the distance, knowing full well it'll blow over soon enough. The company stuck to its priorities, making reliable machines, investing in the future of farming, and letting Trump shot himself horse into the void. And the thing is, that silence, that complete lack of engagement, it drove Trump insane. He thrives on feuds, on a back and forth, on the idea that he can bully anyone into submission, But John Deere wasn't playing. No panicked CEO issuing apologies, no desperate attempts to smooth things over, just business as usual. Machines being built, crops being harvested, profits rolling in. Meanwhile, the rest of America couldn't help but see the irony. A man who had spent his entire career branding himself as a champion of the working class was now actively trying to turn them against the company that, quite literally, built their way of life. It was the perfect encapsulation of modern American politics. A billionaire, utterly detached from reality, throwing a fit because a 200-year-old tractor company refused to kiss the ring.
Now, we asked Deere & Company about the comments, and the Moline-based company has just responded. A spokesperson for the company said only 4% of U.S. sales from their products are made in Mexico, and Deere has had a presence in Mexico since 1952. The company goes on to say that more than 75% of all sales in the U.S. are from U.S.-based manufacturing. You can read the company's...
And the farmers? The ones Trump was banking on to rally behind him? They had more important things to do. Maybe a few diehards slapped a Trump 2024 sticker on their equipment in protest, but at the end of the day, those tractors still had work to do. No amount of political theatrics was going to change that. In the end, Trump was left sputtering, defeated not by a politician, not by the media, but by a company that didn't even have to lift a finger to win. A campaign built on grievance had finally met something immune to its nonsense. A John Deere idling quietly in the distance, waiting for the noise to die down before getting back to work. And really, isn't that something? After years of taking on politicians, tech billionaires, and the entire media industry, the thing that finally ran over Trump was a tractor.